You guys done?
Yeah, pretty much.
Good evening. I will call the Monday, September 23rd meeting of Dublin City Council to order. And Chris, would you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And could you please call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Rosa? Here. Ms. Aludo?
Here.
Mayor Peterson?
Here.
Mr. Keenan? Vice Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Here.
We're to the citizen comments portion of the agenda. No one has signed in on my little sheet here, but if anybody would like to raise their hand, we will give them the mic for 5 minutes to talk about whatever they want. Seeing no hands, we will move along. The consent agenda. Does any member of council wish to remove any of the 3-minute meeting minutes items that are on the consent agenda? Hearing no such request, I make a motion that we approve those 3 meeting minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Yes. Vice Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Second reading, public hearing on ordinances, ordinance 44-19.
Accepting the annexation of 1.29 plus or minus acres from Jerome Township, Union County, to the city of Dublin.
Jennifer, anything new from the last time?
No changes from last time. Again, this property is in the proposed annexation area of the community plan and in the exclusive Dublin expansion area pursuant to the agreements with City of Columbus, and staff recommends approval.
Any questions from council? Hearing none. Ann?
Vice Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
And Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Ordinance 45-19. Ann?
Adopting and enacting a supplement to the Code of Ordinances for the City of Dublin, Ohio.
Jennifer?
Again, no changes. It's primarily a housekeeping measure, and the supplement includes legislation that's passed by City Council through June 30th and the state legislature current through April 11th of this year.
Questions from council?
I missed one first reading for this. Jane had sent an email about some building standards. Is that going to be inclusive in this update, or is that going to be an additional update we will look at as well?
Are you talking about the property maintenance
Yes.
updates? That will be separate legislation that will be coming before the end of the year. So it's on the docket.
Sooner the better. Great, thank you. That's all I have.
Does the B&B stuff, does that fall under the same category, or is that something we need?
No, that went to committee, and that legislation will be coming back to council.
Because there's some more public input on that if you've seen the.
Correct.
Okay.
And I think, are we continuing to monitor that? Because it looks like, when we first talked about that in our Community Development Committee meeting, there was a fixed number known in the city, and it appears that that number is growing.
We've gotten several reports of others, and so we were going to update that list and bring it back to council with the legislation.
Very good, thank you.
So can you require a permit for that, or charge a fee, or?
So the committee recommended that we pursue registration. So for any short-term rental that is rented 14 nights per year, anything over that would require registration. I think some of the feedback has been perhaps only permitting short-term rentals during that 2-week period.
Anything over 14 days is taxable.
And we do have other methods of we can obtain bed tax through the code right now as it's written.
But there was some other information presented to the committee, such as Arlington banned them altogether. There, a number of communities have enacted various legislation. The information that the committee received was there was 3 or 4 that were active on various websites, but it appears maybe that number may be in flux, and so we may have to look at it differently than.
Right. We had received, over the weekend, we learned of 2 additional ones. And so I guess that brings up an unrelated topic. Would you like for the committee to revisit some of that, giving the additional information? Would you like us to bring a memo back to council, maybe looking at the options as a whole?
Probably that would be best.
Okay.
Because it feels like it's growing at a more rapid rate than what we were aware of.
And it seems this might be the time of year when some of those uses are more prevalent.
So that would be good with me if we wanted to send it back.
We need a motion to do that, to resend it back to committee. Did they already issue a
saying they're
recommendation?
coming to
It just hasn't
council,
gotten
right?
here yet?
It hasn't gotten to you yet.
But
And
they're
so what
done doing what they're doing?
Right, so they are, and so we can do an informational memo for the next, either the next packet or the packet after, just kind of giving a layout of what's happened, again, what the options are, and seeking direction at that
Based on
council
tonight's
meeting.
discussion by council as
Right.
well, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so you don't need us to do anything then?
Right.
Okay. All right, so is that it on this ordinance here? Any other questions? Ann?
Ms. Saludo?
Yes.
Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Ordinance 46-19.
Authorizing provision of certain incentives to Leading Edge LLC to induce it to lease a facility to retain and expand an office and its associated operations and workforce, all within the city, and authorizing execution of an economic development agreement.
Colleen?
Good evening. We have no changes since the introduction at our last meeting, but just to reiterate, this would retain 19 jobs, create 16 new jobs, and the agreement proposed is a 5-year 18% performance incentive capped at $90,000 and a retention and relocation grant of roughly $76,000. We have Dave Michaels, who is the Chief Technology Officer with Leading Edge. He is here this evening. I'm going to invite him up to the guest podium, and then we are both available to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Michaels, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
What address should we use for you? Address.
5555 Perimeter Drive.
Great.
So my name's Dave Michaels. Even though Leading Edge is a woman-owned IT consultancy, I am the sole male partner for the company. We're basically a company comprised of highly skilled software engineers who solve complex business problems for our clients through custom software. We've been proud to call Dublin our home since we've started in our inception in 2007. We've grown with the community, seen the community grow with us. I personally reside here, love the community. We're really excited about finalizing our lease down at Bridge Park here for the next 10 years and continuing to grow.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments from council?
You're welcome.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you
Glad
very
to have
much. You had the background, how many accolades that the organization has earned in a very short period of time is quite
yes,
impressive.
We've been on the Best Places to Work 8 of our 12 years, Inc. 5000, I think almost every year, Fast 50 for 7 of the 12 years. So we've been pretty successful. We're pretty proud of it.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank
Ann?
you.
Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Yes. Vice Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Saludo?
Yes.
Thank you for coming in, Dave.
Thank you
Appreciate it.
for having me.
Appreciate your time, absolutely. First reading ordinance is ordinance 47-19.
Amending the annual appropriations for the fiscal year ending December 31, 2019.
I will introduce it. Matt?
Good evening, Council. Ordinance 47-19 is the third quarter supplemental, continuing our procedure of bringing a supplemental forward for you quarterly. Details of each requested appropriation are included in the memo accompanying this ordinance. Staff are recommending adoption at the second reading on October 7th, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions from council? Chris?
I had a few questions. All right, let me get, right, there are lots of pages here. Section 5 talks about the county auditor deductions. So we have a deduction of $58,000, an addition of $46,000. Why are some of those going to be negatives and others not?
Sure.
That's unusual.
So what happened is when we got the first quarter, or the first half service payments, we put all of the revenue and all of the expenditures related to those in the 457 fund because we needed to close the month and we needed to figure out how to best handle all of the new Bridge Park TIFs that had come online. So in subsequent conversations, we decided, look, we need to break these out, hence the ordinance that later came between that to create the Block C and split that out. And let's get this organized so that we can administer it properly for the next 30 years. So this is the cleanup for that activity. So we're taking the appropriation and the money out of the 457 fund and putting it into the appropriate TIFs that we've created in the TIF ordinances and that extra one that we created this year so that we can have this organized moving forward.
Okay.
That's why you see a negative appropriation. We're removing the appropriation because we don't have the funding there anymore. We moved the service payment revenue and the county auditor deductions.
So this isn't an appropriations in the sense that additional dollars are coming in. It's an appropriation in the sense that dollars are being moved from one fund to another.
Correct.
Okay, and is that different from the next number was, it looked like interest. We had the 1.655 transfer expense, and then we had principal and interest on the park and the library parking structures. Are those additional appropriations, or is that a transfer of funds as well?
Are we looking at section 4?
Yes.
Okay. So that is an additional appropriation for debt service due to the timing of the bond, the debt offering last year. It happened in December. The ordinance was approved by then, so none of the appropriations were included in that operating budget.
So this is based on information we learned since last year's annual budget was passed?
Correct.
Okay. And we did not anticipate this at all, or we did not anticipate this level?
That's a good question, and I'll be honest, I don't have a good handle on that. I kind of think, I see where you're going with this, and I think we might have been able to anticipate this. I'm not sure exactly why we didn't. I think that's something that I'm going to follow up on as we start to offer another debt offering in late year, early next year. It's possible if this bond debt offering would have happened in January, we wouldn't have had that payment, and then we wouldn't have needed that appropriation. And that might have been the thinking. I wasn't in the, I'm at a little bit of a loss on how to explain exactly how the timing didn't work out on this.
You know, cumulatively, it's a little over $2.3 million, and you know that's a big number for additional appropriations versus you know, a reshuffle of the deck.
It would have been planned in the CIP, but it didn't get in the operating, and I don't know why that didn't happen. It might have been because we expected the timing the difference. So this expenditure would have been planned as part of the capital improvement program, but I see your point.
And my point in that is really to make sure
issue.
that we get those appropriations in the budget for this year, because in the CIP budget, that's not a needle mover. But in our annual budget, our operating budget, that is, you know, we might have made a few different decisions if we had known an additional $2.3 million.
I think you're going to find they knew about it. I think it's a timing issue. We'll get to the bottom of it at the next meeting.
That's all I'm asking,
Yeah.
just clarity, and to make sure when we do
I'm sure we
our
knew
operating
about it.
budget this
Yeah.
year that we make, you know, we kind of sweep the corners and look at additional debt that we think is going to be, you know, need some coverage in the subsequent year. That's all I had. Thank you.
Nothing else? Kathy?
Yeah, I mean, sort of related to that, at the Finance Committee meeting, we talked a bit about the timing of the operating budget. I know one of the goals was to try to do that a bit earlier this year. This is the consequence of that sometimes, is that you will approve something and then occurrences happen. So
The funding was there, and Angel knew about the number, and it was just a matter of when it appeared.
Yeah.
And we talked about this,
Yeah.
too. We said that it may come actually at the end of this year, just because of the timing of it. So I do think it was anticipated. I think the timing piece of it was not anticipated.
And the part I don't understand is why maybe we didn't put some placeholder in there for contingency.
At least a footnote of some sort, yeah.
Yes, semi-related to that, under Section 1 on economic incentives, how do we normally budget for that, or do we not budget for
Sure.
that?
So typically, we budget for all the incentives paid out every year on the rebates, the incentive rebates. So
That are existing.
that are existing, correct. So everything that we've approved that has an income tax rebate for next year is budgeted. In March, when we do that calculation, some percentage of them will not meet their target. So that will create a balance there of now money that we can utilize. And typically, that amount is enough to cover these retention location grants that occur in a same-year cycle. So as you approve them in 19, we typically use those income tax rebate monies that were not needed and use those to pay the location grants. And that has always been enough until this year when it wasn't. And this is really the way that we have to do that when we appropriate or when we approve incentives that are going to take place in the same calendar year, is to come back with a supplemental to look for that additional funding.
So this is now, September? We may likely have things in October, November, December, let's hope. that continues. I noticed in there some of those payments are indicated to be up until a year from the time they're warranted. So are we not anticipating that more will occur, or we will see another supplemental?
It is probably likely that if another economic development agreement were to come through in the last quarter, they would not meet their location incentive in this year, and we would have the unearned rebate money from 2020 to pay that. If not, we would bring a supplemental forward probably around the third quarter when we realized we didn't have the money available to seek that additional appropriation.
And then my only other question was in Section 6. It talks about a reserve fund in the language, but I didn't necessarily see the reserve fund listed, or are those numbers inclusive of a reserve fund, and how much is that reserve fund?
Sure. So those all deal with the Bridge Park Development Agreement, and the reserve fund is the first part of the waterfall. So all of these payments start to enter into the waterfall, and the reason this mentions the reserve fund is that's the part of the waterfall that we're on currently.
So it's nomenclature.
Well, it's just to kind of give you some additional explanation on where this money's going and why we need to approve the appropriation.
Edit? Chris?
I have one additional question. There was a $44,360 for Wi-Fi services for the Irish Festival. Have we explored what a cost might be to permanently solve that problem so that we didn't have that? It appears that funds have been included in this year's budget to continue that service. Have we looked at what it would cost to permanently upgrade that to avoid that reoccurring expense?
I believe we've looked at several different solutions, and I'd have to check on that with IT and see where they landed on that.
Just seems like a big number. I know we talked about the individual service providers wanting to make sure that their customers had coverage, and it seems like we're shouldering the lion's share of the expense for individual customers to get better service at the Irish Fest.
I know running fiber throughout the whole park probably is not a small cost, but I'll get back to you on that and see where they have cost estimates on.
That'd be great. Thank you.
We talked about that too, and we talked about having some difficulty in working with some of the providers in terms of finding appropriate locations, because they want to put some permanent installations in terms of their connected, so that everyone can connect. And not sure we could quite get to an even meeting ground there with them. And then running fiber is expensive. But it actually would be great to have a follow-up, because I know we had this discussion for at least the last 2 years. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, we will see you back here at the October 7th meeting. Thanks, Matt. Resolution 48-19, Ann?
Accepting the lowest and best bid for the 2019 Storm Structure Maintenance Program.
Mr. Hammersmith.
Introduction.
I'll introduce.
Members of council, on September 3rd of this year, we opened 2 bids for the 2019 annual Storm Structure Maintenance Program. This program provides for the maintenance, rehabilitation, and repair of storm structures associated with our storm sewer system, which includes curb and gutter inlets, catch basins, and manholes throughout the community. And this year's program included 66 deficient structures. The engineer's estimate for the work this year was $166,000. Funds are budgeted in the CIP for this from the annual stormwater maintenance capital funds. Columbus Asphalt Paving submitted the lowest and best bid of $145,519, which was approximately 12.34% less than the estimate. This work will commence in October and is expected to be completed by the end of November. There was a map that was included in your package showing the specific locations. Staff will ensure that there's appropriate traffic control in place, and also that there will be certainly appropriate site restoration as necessary. Previous experience with Columbus Asphalt on past projects has been very, very good. We've always been satisfied with their work, and they've done high-quality work. Staff recommends council approval of this resolution, accepting as lowest and best the bid of Columbus Asphalt Paving, the amount of $145,519, and authorizes city manager to enter into a contract with Columbus Asphalt Paving. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions from council?
I have just one question. So in your map and in regions 4, 5, and 6, I can't tell exactly because many of them overlay one another, but it appears maybe 50 of the 66 culverts are located in essentially one neighborhood.
Correct.
Did we have some sort of catastrophic failures in the construction?
Typically, what we've seen in the past, and when they're clustered like that, is how they actually shimmed up these storm inlets themselves. Probably 20 years ago, 20, 25 years ago, they used cinder brick to shim up the structures, and they disintegrated as a result of salt. And that's usually what we see in the failure of the curb inlets. We no longer allow cinder brick. We use a polyethylene material now to shim up the grates themselves.
How many more clusters like this do you see?
We'll probably continue to see this. It's going to start to reduce because we started that practice probably 2003, 2004, using the polyethylene.
Okay. That's all I had.
Anything else?
I had a quick question. So when you talk about maintenance in the stormwater, these are structural maintenance, right? This isn't necessarily the water itself, the algae, the
No,
things like
this
that occur.
These are purely structures.
These are purely structural. Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Ann?
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Resolution
Thank you.
49-19. Thanks, Paul.
Approving and accepting the plat for the Hamlet on Jerome subdivision.
I will introduce it. Claudia.
Good evening. This was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission on the 22nd of August of this year, recommended for approval and acceptance by City Council. And it is for a single lot in the Hawks Nest subdivision. I have a graphic that illustrates that if you...
Oh, I think you mean the...
Well, hang on a second. I think we skipped ahead one.
Oh, did I skip?
We were on Hamlet.
I'm sorry.
We're on the
I'm
Hamlet,
sorry.
sorry.
Okay. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
This one was approved
Now we're all
by...
very anxious about the Hawks. We can hardly wait.
I apologize. This one was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission in March of 2019, and it is for what council had seen as a rezoning, the new lots. The new lots that are off Roma Drive and then Hamlet Court. Those are the cluster empty nester that were detailed out in the final development plan that the commission also approved. And then I couldn't fit this on one slide, so we're going to have to jump ahead. But the south end of the property then includes the estate lot, the existing lot that the developer is retaining for their own use. So there are no conditions. Everything has been addressed that was discussed at the preliminary, and anything that the Planning Commission had was part of the final development plan.
Chris?
I have two questions.
Sure.
Lots 11 and 5, drive access, will that be off Roma Drive or Hamlet Court?
Which one?
I'm fairly certain, and this would be something that we haven't yet approved yet as part of, it would be part of permitting. For 11, it is very likely that it will be Hamlet Court anyways, because the cluster mailbox is on Roma, located on Roma, and Paul just said that 5 will also be off Hamlet.
So, okay. Those are really close to the intersection, but, okay. My only other question was in section 1, it says the city council hereby approves and accepts the plat for Autumn Rose Woods, section 2 subdivision.
Oh, in the resolution itself?
Yes, it's in the resolution. Therefore, be it resolved by City Council, Section 1, the City Council hereby approves and accepts the plat for the Autumn Rose Woods Section 2 subdivision.
Gotcha. So I have to fix that typo before it gets signed.
Clean that one up. That's all I had.
Any other questions? Kathy?
Yeah, I had a question. I know when this came before us, as we were talking about the development overall, a lot of discussion about walkway and paths around the pond and making that pond usable. I read the planning and zoning notes. It sounds like significant progress was made towards that. Could you update us, Claudia, on the layout and the walkway and around that pond?
I don't think there is a formal walkway around the pond, just because from an engineering standpoint that didn't work out. So there are benches and stone outcroppings that are on the what would be the north side of the pond, near the bulb of the cul-de-sac.
I'm just trying to make sure. I know one of the conversations we had before was that the pond was actually an amenity. It was discussed as an amenity, and I know there was conversations about were pathways to the pond then constructed?
Not at this point, no.
When we saw it last, there was one coming off of Hamlet Court there at the terminus of the court.
Yeah.
Headed down to the pond.
Right.
But they weren't going to make the loop around the stone outcrop, and the benches were there at the terminus of that coming off of Hamlet, if memory serves me correctly.
Yes.
And then there were going to be some other benches around the pond, but not, people would walk in the grass and not on a path.
There were engineering issues, is what I remember.
Yeah. I just couldn't remember if that walkway, I know we had talked about it. I didn't think last time we saw it that walkway to, because I couldn't tell from here necessarily, that the walkway to the storm or the amenity was actually a paved walkway, and that that is finalized in.
It was finalized at the Planning and Zoning Commission as part of that final development plan. Off the top of my head, I do not remember if it was paved or if it was crushed.
But we're feeling that we've made this actually an amenity, not.
As much as they were able to do so with the water level, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Kathy? Anybody else? Ann?
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Yes. Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Amorose Grooms?
Yes.
And Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Now, Claudia, we're getting to Resolution 50-19. Ann?
Approving and accepting the plat for the Hawks Nest Section 2-1 subdivision.
And this came to us from a property owner that has purchased this home and wanted to add a deck to the rear, and then was denied a permit due to the existing no-build zone. So I colored it in on the right side there. The existing no-build zone is the red dotted line, and then what the new proposal is the green line that would go in a straight area and an angle over to the neighboring property. It meets all applicable zoning requirements. We are not sure why the existing no-build zone was drawn the way it is. Couldn't find anything in the records. So we taken that to the Planning Commission, and they have recommended approval at their August meeting, as I mentioned.
You know, I just add that we've got a number of these that continue to come to us. We need to do a better job on the front end. The one property, you'll remember that we visited, literally, you walk out the back door on the step, and that was the no-build zone. No house, no plat should be laid out that way where you can't put a back patio or a deck of some kind.
And unfortunately, a lot of times it's not, you can't anticipate it. It is what the owner or the builder picks for a home and where that home ends up being located. That particular permit that you were speaking about, usually our staff that reviews them also puts a note on it that says nothing can encroach past this line.
Yeah,
but doesn't
it was on there as well,
Yeah.
but people don't read that plat,
Right.
not when they're buying the house or whatever. It seems like it's incumbent on the builder or the developer to, I don't know if there's anything we can do by way of ordinance or some kind of legislation, that they need to let people know that the footprint, depending on what they pick up, whether it's a two-story or ranch or whatever, is going to make a significant difference in what they might be able to do with that backyard. That particular one we visited had a beautiful backyard. It wasn't impacting anybody, and yet they can't sell the house because of the pre-existing patio that was put there without tearing it out.
So Claudia, were there other homes in this? Did you guys take a look-see at homes around this to see if this was affecting anyone else in that community?
And that's also a conversation we have with the property owner as well that requests this, is if there are other circumstances where this would be the case, it's better to fix several at a time. There was no other one that had this particular unique circumstance.
And normally they'll build and then they'll ask for forgiveness.
Claudia, it was my understanding that the no-build zone on this home was different than the surrounding homes. But we did not get a picture of any of the surrounding homes' no-build zones. So can you tell me a little bit about the adjacent parcels' no-build zones?
I mean, partially it has to do with the shape of this particular lot as well, where it does have that angle as it comes to the south and then east. So the eastern property line has a no-build zone that is approximately 50 feet toward their rear. We had, for the Planning and Zoning Commission, included the existing plat for Hawks Nest. I'm not sure if that made it into your packet or not.
I didn't see it. I did look.
We can follow up on that.
I'd like to, because it appears from your illustration here that the green line, where it meets the black line on the lower right-hand side, we're going to create a jog in the no-build zone, will come north and then continue east. And I don't think we want to do a jog line.
Unfortunately, this, again, the shape of this lot, what we would, this, see if I can do this. This is the rear yard of this particular lot. This would be the side yard of that lot, but it is the rear yard of the adjacent lot. So with those corner lots, dual frontage, that's how we would interpret that.
Okay, see where your 62 measurement is there that runs parallel?
Here.
Yes.
Yeah.
If the no-build line came to there to match up with the neighbors, would that still permit them to do a patio and whatever their desire was to happen in the backyard? I'm just trying to, so one of the things about the case that Mike's referring to is that it's a consistent no-build zone across the entirety of that area. So if we changed his, we would be creating a jog. I don't think that we should do that because that's almost like spot zoning. So I don't want to create a jog in this no-build zone. I do want to make it so that these people can construct the patio and have a pleasant backyard experience. I don't want to make a problem for policy moving forward.
Right, and the other difference here as well is that in the one that you've visited, some of you, it's sort of a triple whammy where it is a zoning requirement that the lot line or the no-build zone coincides with in their development text, as well as there being floodplain and public property all adjacent, and yes, all of them are.
But it's consistent. It's
Absolutely.
consistent in the neighborhood. It may be unfortunate, but it is consistent. I don't want to create something that's inconsistent with the neighborhood.
You're not going to solve this until you get the other, you're going to have to bring the maps back and take a look at the adjacent. Are you okay with, well, if you prove this now, you can't change it later probably, so.
I agree. I would like to see at least Lot 111 and Lot 103, so that we, and I'd rather see the whole thing along that road. Because I completely agree, that was the first thing I saw was, well, if we move this no-build zone line further down along the line between Lot 111 and Lot 102, then all of a sudden Lot 111's no-build line is in a completely different spot. It doesn't feel continuous at all.
We need to be real careful about the unintended consequences that we may cause here, because the way that it is, our process is now, I don't know how many houses are in Hawks Nest, and I would say probably, what, Jennifer, 98% of them don't have issues with no build zones. There are a few that will crop up that do. And I think the one, I did go out there as well, Mike, I think Chris and I went out there, and that was a little bit different because they had already built on it, you know? I mean, they just sort of built it, and then they were asking for sort of forgiveness, and Chris is right, it made it different than everybody else's. I think the situation we have here, though, if we're going to take, and we have a process for an exception and for a modification, which they've gone through. These people went through the procedure that they needed to go through, and they got approval, and now here we are to decide. If we decide, okay, well, we're going to bring in the lot next door, and we're going to bring in, who's going to be the applicant? Who's going to bear, you know, maybe those people don't care that their no-build zone is where it is, and how do we now sort of go back and try to fix all the no builds? I guess I'm just wondering, where does it stop?
Yeah, this is better, yeah.
So if there is that jog, and the lot next to it is going to have a no build zone that is not necessarily a straight line with its neighbor.
And it has that already, technically, yes.
I almost feel like we should just stick with the case-by-case dealing with the exceptions as opposed to trying to solve all the problems that could potentially come up in this.
Looking at the map, it really makes a big difference, because they've got plenty of depth on 101, 100, and on around. It's just that angular lot, so I would agree, Greg, let's do this as the exception and be done with it.
98.
But I don't think but if you look where the...
I see where the line goes. I see what you're saying, because it's going to come across and then back up.
Right.
But there's not much you can do down there anyway, so.
Well, I would just be in favor of making it consistent with the adjacent, squaring it off and making it consistent with the adjacent
Who drew these lines?
Whoever approved this in,
No, the revision here, was that staff?
oh, their surveyor did.
The
so-
surveyor and
Can we
staff?
find out what
yeah.
they need to have a deck?
Ultimately, what we thought made sense is there is a 50-foot setback required from the right-of-way of Avery Road. So this is what that line shows. So if that were to go, if that were to go straight down, it would be coincidental with the setback requirement of Avery. That's why we drew or accepted the line being drawn the way it is.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm
And the
looking at
lots-
lot 98, I'm confused then. You're going to get a 50, or maybe this is just the way this is drawn.
I mean, the shape of lot 98, I don't know who drew that line either. That is definitely a very, very awkward shaped lot, and
So that doesn't look like there's a 50-foot setback, or maybe it's just how this is drawn here.
I think the 50-foot setback's only from Avery.
From Avery, okay. So there's
The
nothing,
rest of
these are
it is-
adjacent, these are other homes, I got it, okay.
Yeah,
Right.
those are larger tracks there behind it.
Yeah, I agree. It's weird.
There's quite a variation across this.
Okay.
Well, I would like to see it be where the no-build lines match up lot to lot. Otherwise, I think it's going to be very confusing, and we're probably going to get into some enforcement issues. Because the neighbor then may put a swing set right back in that no-build, no-disturb kind of zone, and say, well, my neighbor has one back here, and they're out of the zone. So I just try to think it should be fair and equitable across all of the neighbors. But I'm one vote, so do
Well,
what we
is
can.
that a problem we can, I mean, I don't know that we can solve the problem for
We
lot
could
101.
postpone this till the next meeting and allow us to take a closer look at the adjacent properties and the no-build zones within this
That could be
area.
true, but then
and come back to you.
kind of, we're in a sense penalizing lot 102 and saying it's going to take 2 more weeks for this to get
Yeah,
through.
I don't want to do that either, yeah.
I mean, maybe they're trying to get this built before winter comes, and they've
They're
done what
submitting
we've
their
asked them to
permit
do.
tomorrow.
What's that?
They're ready to submit their permit tomorrow.
Well, you can decide on this one this evening, and we can take a look at the rest of them and bring
think
that
that
back
makes sense.
to council.
Yeah.
They have gone through the process that we've set, so. I mean,
Now,
I
at
hear what
least
you're
highlights,
saying.
we know the issue. Maybe we can look through this
Yeah.
and come up with something. Can we adjust no-build zones, or do they have to apply and,
It goes through the whole process.
they got to go through that whole thing?
Yeah, it's a
And-
whole
and
rigmarole.
They're usually consistent throughout. And like Claudia alluded to, in the previous situation you were talking about, there was a zoning requirement in the text. This is a straight zone district, and the lots are a little more individualized.
Well, the only one we have in front of us right now is this one.
What do we need to do here? We need to put a motion up or not? What are we on here? What? Motion? It's just a vote, yeah. I say call the vote.
Well, right, on this one, and then what will
Yeah.
you do? Is there a way to revisit this issue like Chris has been thinking and trying to marry up this line and make it straight? And can we be the applicant out of just a sense of justice to just fix it as opposed to making something?
Not without their
go through?
permission. I mean, they've gone, I don't see that happening.
Let us look
Okay.
into that, too.
So the question is, the permit that they have before, or they want to bring the permit tomorrow, would it fit regardless of which of the two decisions? Do we know?
I'm assuming they need the no-build zone moved, or they
Of
wouldn't.
course, but I mean,
Right, but how
I'm
far?
talking about aligning it with the neighbor, or
Could we
what's
square
on
it off
that.
and line up with the neighbor, or do they need it all the way to?
That's the question, yeah. Do we know, Claudia, or not?
So you're basically saying that your squaring off would be, the bottom of the green line?
I think would
Right,
This
it would
one
go
would
across
go-
that
would go
62
up.
line.
move it up where it
Right
says
there.
62.0.
Gotcha.
On a diagonal up. to
Where the
the-
red line
to
meets
the
the
red
black line.
Like, would
and
that
then
still
there.
give them enough to do what they need to do?
I would assume that it would, but again, I'm not the applicant, and I did not say they needed to be
You
here.
won't know till they file for the permit. So,
Vote.
Okay. Ann?
Mr. Keenan?
yes.
Vice Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Ms. Saludo?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
We really need these whole pictures, though. To look at a lot in isolation is tremendously difficult to do.
We need to do a better job on the front end, too.
Sure, and yeah.
Anticipating these kinds of things, so.
Yeah, and I
Flat
think
stuff.
questioning the builder as well, like, it's nice that they drew the line for us, but perhaps asking them, when you take a look at the adjacent lots, to say, if we match these up, can we do this, and they still have enough room to do what they need to do, would have been a really good sort of analytical question to ask, so we don't run into these issues in the future.
We're definitely smarter nowadays, also asking developers to show us what house can actually fit
Yeah.
when we see those smaller ones.
Okay, thanks, Claudia. I make a motion that we waive council rules of order to address resolutions 51 and 52-19 together. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ann?
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Ms. Saludo?
Yes.
And Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
These are Resolution 5119, adopting a statement of services for proposed expedited 2 annexation of 11 acres, more or less, from Washington Township, Franklin County to the city of Dublin. Resolution 5219, adopting a statement regarding possible incompatible land uses and zoning buffer for a proposed expedited 2 annexation of 11 acres, more or less, from Washington Township, Franklin County to the city of Dublin, as required by Section 709.023C of the Ohio Revised Code. This applicant is MC Shire Rings, LLC.
I will introduce them. Jennifer?
Good evening. The aforementioned annexation was filed with the Franklin County Commissioners on September 11th as an expedited Type 2 annexation. Under this process, the city must, within 20 days of its filing, adopt a resolution stating what services that will provide to the area upon annexation, as well as a resolution relating to land uses and zoning buffers. Resolution 51-19 lists all of the services that Dublin can provide to the property upon annexation. Resolution 52-19 provides that if the property is developed in a manner that's inconsistent with any adjacent township property, will ensure that the appropriate buffers are included. Under Dublin's zoning code, the territory is automatically rezoned to the rural district upon annexation. It's the applicant's intention to file a rezoning to a planned development district to develop single-family housing, which will be consistent with the surrounding residential development that's in both Washington Township and the city of Dublin. The property's in the proposed annexation areas of the community plan and is in Dublin's exclusive expansion area per the water and sewer agreements with City of Columbus. Staff recommends approval of both resolutions. I'm happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is also here to answer any questions.
Questions from council? Chris?
Guess that's me again.
Yep.
Okay, so it will come in as rural land use, but it speaks to the community plan, which indicates which may incorporate a variety of single and multifamily dwellings, generally in larger projects intended to provide a mix of housing options and transition from existing single-family neighborhoods at a typical density of 3 dwelling units per acre. Do we have any idea of if they're looking at single-family homes, what the density that they're contemplating is?
So perhaps the applicant could come to the front and help us with that. They've had a preliminary meeting with staff, and I think it's to develop empty nester geared housing.
Hi, my name is Michael King, 58884 Dunheath Loop, Dublin, Ohio. So we're proposing annexation and then rezoning to 34 single-family lots on approximately 11.4 acres. We'll be catering towards the mature audience, 3 units or 3 lots to the acre, extremely high-end exterior elevations, modern farmhouse, metal roofs, stone foundations, and then high-end interior finishes, cased jammed windows, granite countertops, high-efficiency, energy-efficient housing, catered more towards a wealthier, mature adult, empty nester type.
What approximate square footage and price range?
Yes, it'll start out, there'll be a ranch at 2,200 square foot, a first floor master at 2,600, split level, I'm sorry, 2 ranches in the low 2,000 square foot, a split level, and a 2-story, and a first floor master plan.
Will you have age restrictions on your deed?
Not planned.
Not planned. And then have you walked through, if you have 11 acres and you're looking at 33 units?
34 units.
34 units. For your density, have you planned any open space, green space?
Yes,
Have
we've
you meet those
20%
requirements?
open space, walking paths throughout. There'll be 2 retention pond areas.
That your HOA, I'm assuming, would love to maintain.
They'll have to.
There you go.
Sorry, did I say that out loud?
Oh, no, we're not planning on turning anything into parkland. We're going to maintain it.
Good. Well, thank you. I had some density questions because of what the community plan stated.
Yep, we're adhering to the community plan, future community plan, so.
Very good.
Sounds exciting.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Any other questions from council?
That's all I had.
Vice Mayor Amherst Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Ms. Fox? I'm sorry.
Is not here.
Where is she?
Euler.
Mr. Rose.
Yes.
That's on both.
I vote yes as well.
And, boy, really.
I'll vote for
optimized.
Jane.
And Mayor Peterson.
Resolution 53-19.
Declaring certain city-owned property as a surplus and authorizing city manager to dispose of said property in accordance with Section 37.07 of the Dublin Codified Ordinances.
Daryl,
Introduction.
I'll introduce.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Earlier this year, Chief Pies, Lieutenants Tabernick and Latanza discussed the future of our police motor unit with their supervisory staff and remaining members of the program and decided to discontinue the use of the police motorcycles. This decision was based on considerations of the limited utility of the police motorcycles, including equipment, capacity, functionality, operational restrictions, as well as work hour and weather-related constraints. Lack of regular utilization of these motorcycles for police operational activities. Lack of trained personnel available to operate these, and insufficient number of police personnel interested in filling current unit vacancies. Staff recommends adoption of this resolution to sell these motorcycles on GovDeals.
Thanks, Daryl. Any questions from
Has
council?
anybody told Heinz?
He'll be the first bidder. Do we have a minimum bid set on these?
We do not. We have the ability to set minimum bids on these, and likely will.
I would think, well, no, I'm good in the motorcycle department, but, with so few miles, less than, 8,500 miles on some of these units, they should be considered high value, because I know we keep excellent maintenance records, and, I know we want to sell them, but I don't want to give them away.
Oh, absolutely. Agree, absolutely.
We could also do some additional advertising to groups that we think may be interested in these too, so they know that they're out there, and that will send some of the bids up as well.
Do we have any agreements with any other jurisdictions that have motorcycle police for any event that we might have that we would want to engage in a motorcycle unit?
Chief, can you answer that?
Yes, we still have partnerships with agencies that will still have motorcycles as part of their
So if
fleet that we could utilize in case we needed their help or assistance in any sort of escort situation.
Good.
Yes.
Thank you.
So what changed? We had them before. It's
Police chiefs.
Heinz left, people got promoted.
Yeah, unfortunately, we just don't have riders available necessarily in positions where they can ride regularly. Chief Heinz retiring, Sergeant Potts retiring last year, Officer Evans retiring. The two that are currently trained moved into new capacity, so they really don't have the opportunity to ride regularly. One is a detective, another is a newly promoted supervisor, so their responsibilities are really elsewhere. So long term, the concern is that if they can't ride regularly, maintaining proficiency is certainly paramount, and safety is certainly a concern. So it's just at the point where I don't think we have, it won't be tenable in the future to continue to staff the program.
Those motorcades is one of the most dangerous jobs going.
Yeah, unfortunately, every few months you'll see a motor officer who is either injured or in an accident. Unfortunately, we haven't had that in our program, but that's ultimately what we took into consideration as we made this decision.
Yeah. And if these aren't being utilized, you let them set, they become unsafe.
Correct. Yep.
Anything else from council? Okay, Ann?
Ms. Saludo?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Amaros Grooms?
Yes.
And Mayor Peterson?
Yes. Under the other portion of our agenda, review adoption of the 2020 regular council meeting schedule. Chris?
So we've seen this circulated a number of times. Hopefully you have had an opportunity to look at your schedule and line it up with this schedule. I would like to go walk through and make a couple of recommendations because I know scheduling the first part of the year can be very difficult. I would like to go ahead and select dates for the retreat. There are two proposed here, February 6th, 7th, and 20th, 21st. I think being an election year and the fact that we will have at least one new council person, the later date of February 20th, 21st is probably the most advantageous, which would give that individual more time too. So I don't know if that's acceptable to all. That would be my recommendation.
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I'm good.
All right.
I would also like to get performance reviews on the calendar because, again, in March with spring break and other things, it can be difficult to schedule. I would propose performance reviews either March 9th or the 11th. Those are the Wednesdays between our 2nd and 16th meetings. I have no preference on that.
Is the 9th a Tuesday? And
They're both Wednesdays, I believe. Which seems to be a regular meeting night for this body, Mondays and Wednesdays typically.
I'm sure do we have a State of the City date yet? I don't know what that is.
I'm sorry, the 9th is a Monday. It's the Monday between our two meetings in March, or the 11th, which is the following Wednesday. I apologize. So we could continue with Monday nights, or we could do a Wednesday night and break up the weeks.
Toss one out there and let's see what anybody
Monday night, I heard over here, so let's
You gotta
go with
vote,
the
Mike.
9th.
You going to vote?
I had a motion to put on the floor to make all the meetings on Saturday morning at 8 o'clock.
Perfect.
But I thought it would die for lack of a
It probably
second.
would not get a second.
Let's go ahead and put it on for Monday, then March the 9th, unless there are any objections.
Speak now.
And then I would propose, since Monday, November 23rd is the week of Thanksgiving, and many of us have family traveling for that holiday, that we do have an optional date of November the 16th on the calendar, and I would propose that we would move that to the meeting November the 23rd to November the 16th.
So just to clarify, did you want November 9th to be left in
Yes,
place?
she selected
Yes,
November
please.
9th.
November 9th and then the 20, I'm sorry, and the 16th.
23rd becomes the 16th.
Okay.
Of course, it's always flexible if something comes up and you need to move things around too, so council can always decide that.
It's a lot easier to plan when you have something on the schedule than to try to jam something in the schedule without planning. So that covers most of our things that we have deadlines for, the performance reviews, the retreat, and council meeting dates.
So is that a motion?
Well, I have
And,
a question,
yes,
though.
ma'am.
So on the Monday, January 6th, and then there's the optional date, I guess it would be the 13th and/or the 14th. No discussion, I mean, it's the 6th. I wasn't quite sure why this optional date was here.
Well, Mike tends to not.
Doesn't like
he's
it during the national championship.
No,
proverbial
but it isn't-
optimist. So
I'm
we
not-
could do the 13th. Those are just choices if you didn't like
No,
what was
I'm
on
not. I'm just saying, there
Why
wasn't a
was it
proposal.
there?
I thought, why was
Yeah.
it there? That was my question. I thought somebody wanted it.
Greg
Was
seems to
confused.
think that the Buckeyes,
They
he's
got a
saying there's a
shot.
chance.
They got a
this year.
shot.
So maybe we want to move that one to the 13th.
No, I'm saying I wasn't sure why it was on here at all.
Just
Because
from
if-
past practice, really, just.
Conversation.
In January.
Got it. So it is the 6th, and that
It
is
is the
really a
6th,
question.
right, right,
Perfect.
School
That's
goes
what I was trying to
So
understand.
do we want to meet on the night of the national championship football game, or do we not?
No.
We do not.
So then we'll move that one to the 13th.
No, the 13th is the championship.
Oh, that is the championship.
Yes,
So we're on
currently
the
is
6th.
6.
6 and
I think
20.
that
I wasn't
Kathy's
sure
question.
why it was there at all.
Is that option on there because someone was making noise? And I don't think anybody
I was
was.
wondering why it was there or not. So we're saying it's the 6th and the 21st. We're not saying it's the 13th
That's
and the
correct.
27th, right? So-
6th and 21st.
Okay, so I wasn't sure why those were there at all. Okay.
Did you get all that in?
I did.
Okay.
See
So
what
that's a motion?
Is there any further, does anyone else have comments? That is a motion, then
I
I
will
move
second
that
that
we
motion.
do these dates as we discussed.
And Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
And Mr. Keenan?
You should have to abstain. Staff comments. Michelle?
Yes, few comments. First of all, since Daryl Seiler is here this evening, I just wanted to take a minute to recognize him. As you know, this is his last council meeting and his last week with the city. Daryl started in 2011. I had the opportunity to actually hire him when I was Director of Administrative Services. And you've seen all the accolades that our fleet has received over the years, and that's 100% on Daryl and his advocacy and his efforts towards that. So, you know, we truly do have one of the greenest fleets in the whole country and all of North America. And he's leaving us for Department of Administrative Services at the state level, and will oversee slightly significantly larger fleet than is here. So, yeah, about 5,000, I believe. So congratulations to you, Daryl. We'll miss you, and thank you for everything you've done. And there is a celebration on September 27th from noon to 2 at the Service Center. So if any of you want to join in,
I think that's the 25th, isn't that on Wednesday? I thought.
Oh, is it 25th?
It's
okay.
Wednesdays.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Only because
your last day is the 27th. It's the 25th.
Right.
It's noon to 2 on the 25th. Thank you. And one other item, there's going to be a celebration of the 150th birthday anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, sponsored by Gandhi Memorial Society. And the celebration includes a postmark pictorial cancellation in honor of Gandhi that has been created by the U.S. Postal Service, and that will be only here in Dublin. This pictorial cancellation will be celebrated at an event at the Dublin Post Office on Emerald Parkway on October 2nd at 9 a.m. We'll make sure this gets on your calendar. People attending these local events may obtain the postmark in person at the Emerald Parkway Post Office event on October 2nd, or at the cultural program that's going to be held on October 5th. And the October 5th is the Dublin City Schools have sponsored in partnership with the Gandhi Memorial Society an essay contest in all 3 of our high schools. They've received 88 essays, which will all be recognized at this event, and 3 essays from each high school will be honored. And an award for the overall top essay of a $1,000 grand prize. This event will be held on Saturday, October 5th at Jerome High School from 2:30 to 5. Again, we'll make sure that gets on your calendar. And we're proud to be part of this celebration. And the city will be presenting a proclamation at the Jerome High School event that evening. And the only other item I had was in your packet, info only, there was a memo prepared by Donna Goss related to historical Dublin visioning strategy. And we were going to bring that up for council discussion this evening, but we really wanted to have a full council, especially Councilmember Fox, since this is one of her items of interest at council goal setting. So we're going to postpone that until then. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Committee reports. P&Z, Jane's not here. Admin, Chris?
I think we just did the lion's share of our work.
Did it. Community Development, John, he's not here. Chris and Kathy, who are members, you have anything to?
We'll look forward to hearing the Airbnb-ish sort of thing back and bring that forward to you.
That back.
And there was in the informational packet, we also had a conversation about the opening of the park and the timing on that. And so that will also, excuse me, the bridge, that's what I meant. That will also come back to committee with some recommendations and come back to this group, I think, recommendations about naming and some other things, so.
The Airbnb, it seems like there's a lot of other cities that have already wrestled with this. It'd be interesting to see I'm sure, hopefully they'll work on gathering up some of those other prototypes of the legislation that's been passed elsewhere.
Yep.
And they did for the committee, so that'd be great.
Yeah, we'll make sure that you have that.
Finance, Mike? Public Services, Christina?
We're good for now. We'll have a report next time, I think.
Okay. Coda, Kathy?
Nothing, thank you.
Dublin Friendship Association, Christina?
Yeah, we met. We talked about some brainstorming for the coming year's agenda and what we want to focus on. It was quite a productive meeting. We'll be finalizing that at our November meeting. November meeting. So I'll bring that back to council for November for your consideration.
Thank you, Christina. Morpsey, Chris?
Nothing at this time.
The Logan Union Champaign County Regional Planning Commission, Kathy?
Nothing, thank you.
How about Northwest 33 Quarter Group?
Yeah, that group will meet later in early October, but I did want to just comment, and I mentioned last time that ODOT had set up a US 33 corridor steering committee, and I mentioned that. I'll be part of that, and Megan will serve on that, and that first meeting of that group actually will be later this week. And they will look at ODOT's plans for that corridor and then talk about alternative futures, perhaps, scenario planning, et cetera. Should be a very interesting discussion, and I'll be sure to bring an update back to this group about that.
Thank you, Kathy. Dublin Arts Council, John's not here. Dublin Board of Education, Christine.
Nothing this time.
Washington Township, Chief, you got anything? Everything good in Washington Township? All righty. Dublin Bridges is Jane, and she's not here. And Jane usually kicks us off with roundtable. She's not here, so we'll go to John. He's not here, so we'll go to Kathy.
Jill, I guess I could speak for John and Jane,
Stop the
but
bleeding.
instead
Yeah.
I will go into speak for myself. I just wanted to say thank you to the Economic Development Group. I had an opportunity to go to the Dublin Reality Check I guess, seminar or session that they've done. I've had a chance to go to a couple of them. I sent a note out to council about that. What I think we've all heard consistently from the businesses is one of the biggest challenges is, of course, finding, keeping and advancing the workforce, and that's what those sessions are about. It was really good to see so many businesses from around Central Ohio come and discuss. And so it would be great, I think, at some point for the economic development team to sort of give us a little synopsis of what they've learned. And I look forward to going to future ones. So it was just really an excellent, excellent discussion. And I wanted to also say thank you. There was a note about the safe exchange zone in the follow-up. I think that is a fantastic idea. And I don't know, I'm looking at Chief here. That's already happening? Yeah, so a little bit more background. So if people are buying or selling goods online and want to find a location where they can feel comfortable about meeting the buyer or the seller, it is at the Justice Center at certain times of day, or it's always monitored. It's anytime they want. I thought that was a great idea. I thought, how wonderful is that? So thank you for doing that. Leaf pickup starts October the 7th. Good to know. Well, I had a question about that. So I know we're going to keep the every other week, and I know Megan's not here tonight. The every other week pickup, and I know I've heard from several residents. If what happened last year happens this year, is all the leaves seem to come down within a 3-week period. That if there isn't some ability in the schedule and the planning to, I don't know if that's overtime or what it is to see if we can't have more frequent pickups during those periods, because I know this has been a discussion. I hear it a lot. People have already asked me about it. And so Michelle looks like she has something she wants to say.
Well, we can follow up on that and see what the plan is for this year. And we did improve our process quite a bit, and our crews now have handheld devices, so if someone calls in for a missed pickup, we can get to them within the day, sometimes within the hour or a few minutes. So we've had great success with that. But I will check and see what.
And this is just monitoring. You know, there's some neighborhoods, particularly with the mini big trees, and when they come down, I mean, it's overwhelming a little bit.
That's
so
not just a missed pickup either. It's
just,
you know, if you miss it by a day and now you've got a 2-week, and I did what they did the one year, which you've heard me complain about before, pulled all the leaves between the sidewalk and the curb, and it killed the grass. And it took the better part of 6 months the next year to bring it back. So there ought to be, especially in areas where you have heavily treed woods and what have you, you know, it'd be nice if you had the ability to make a call for a pickup, because it's not the whole subdivision. It's when you can get them out to the curb and.
And it's a short period usually too, right? It's when those leaves all come down, so it's a short period. And
what's funny, as late as it is, we don't have much going on right now.
They'll all drop at once.
Yeah.
They will, and the same thing happens.
All the wet weather, or you think, Chris?
I think it'll be an earlier fall this year. I don't know. We'll have probably. We had such a beautiful growing season last year that the trees held onto their leaves. They've been under stress this year. I suspect that it'll go better this year because I think they'll fall sooner. Last year they didn't fall until very late, and then it snowed, and the ones in front of my house froze, and they weren't able to pick them up till the spring.
Yeah, and that's the problem for service, is that they have to switch back and forth between snowplow and.
Same trucks do both services.
That's not something you do in a half hour.
Michelle,
it takes a while.
Michelle, is there a way to add that to the Go Dublin as a service request?
Go Leaf.
Leaf Go. Go Leaf?
We can definitely look into that. I mean, I think it's a matter of if we have areas we're going to and they're scheduled, then how do you adjust that to get to those other areas? So it's just a matter of how many people we have and how much equipment we have out on the street.
So if you, maybe the next time, just because it's going to start here, just let us know what you're thinking about those, again, just heavy periods or whatever, because, anyway, interesting. And then I look forward to seeing everybody at the Field of Corn party. I don't know what one wears to a Field of Corn party.
Overalls.
But
Overalls, yes.
Overalls.
And pigtails.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Oh, suspender. Okay. No. Look forward to that. What a wonderful celebration. So thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Michael? Christina?
I have a question first. So as the Complete Count Committee kicks off this coming year, I didn't know if council would like to add that as a temporary committee report on this, particularly as we get closer to the spring. Maybe not right away, but...
To add it to our normal committee reports?
Yep, that's my question.
Okay, why don't we do that? Oh, you know better than anybody. Is that worthy of that?
I think not at the beginning of the year, but I do
Okay.
think as we get into the spring and
Maybe
the
you
whole,
could just tie it on to the Friendship Association.
Yeah,
We
I
could just,
can.
you
That's
know.
kind of what I'm asking is, would this be the appropriate time? Yes, good?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for mentioning the corn. It was on my list. And I think this weekend is the last weekend of the Dublin Market. So I hope everybody gets a chance to get out there and enjoy it. Looks like the weather won't be cold. So should be fun. I always enjoy going there. So
And I would say the market has grown substantially.
Oh, my
If you
goodness,
haven't had a
yes.
chance to go this year,
Yes.
from last year to this year, it's
Huge change.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've done an amazing
yes.
job. Yeah.
Yes. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. Chris?
I did read through the memo about the mobility study, and is that going to come to a committee, or is there going to be discussion about that further, or is this just a memo?
I believe this was just an update. If council would like it to go to a committee, we could definitely assign it there for follow-up.
Well, there is really good data here. There isn't a whole lot telling us what it is that we're going to do moving forward. You know, I do know that this was a pilot program, so we have this kind of midpoint pilot data. And I see that we got a grant from MORPC for $65,000 for the senior portion of it. And I think somebody needs to talk about, I don't know if it's the Finance Committee or who, but somebody's going to have to talk about the funding of this and the gaps that need to be filled and where they're going to be, what bucket they're going to be filled from. If it's our bucket, somebody else's bucket.
I think Finance Committee would be, or Community Services, Public Services Committee, one of those two would be good. You're right, it does relate more probably to finance, so we could have a presentation, have Cher come in and kind of talk about what their plan is moving forward.
And both the workforce and the
senior.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is so much, and I can just speak to that from, you know, the CODA experience. They've launched a ride-share service, as you know, and a few others. So I think there is a lot happening out there, so I think it would make a lot of sense to bring that back, not just that pilot, but, Chris, also what's, you know, some of the things that are happening. I think that would be a very useful update, yeah.
You know, we certainly want to continue to make sure that we can age in place as a community, but we have a fiscal responsibility to the balance of the community as well. And when we're looking at $41.48 per person to take them to the grocery store, you know, we've got some responsibilities to the people that need the ride, but we also have a responsibility to the balance of the community to look at that judiciously. So whatever committee you think it wants to go to, I think somebody needs to look at it and say, is this the best option available to us? Do we have any opportunity for cost reductions? Can we find some partnerships? You know, because the model that is before us isn't entirely sustainable. So
I think if it's best in Finance Committee, if there's consensus of council that they would like that referred to that committee, we can
Good by me.
schedule that in an upcoming meeting.
that would be great.
We need to refer that by motion.
That would help.
I would move that we refer the circulator pilot programs, both workforce and senior, to the Finance Committee.
I'll second.
Yeah.
Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
And Mr. Keenan?
The last thing I have is this will be our last opportunity from this location to wish Mike a happy birthday on Friday. So Woo. Many more, but we won't have you sitting with us to do so. You'll come in on your birthday next year? Good. And can you remember to send him a note to request his presence? That's all.
Yes, happy birthday to our friend Mike. There is a card and cupcakes back there waiting for you in the secret room in the back. The only other thing I have is just thank Daryl for all of his service to our community. You know, a lot of what we do in this room, you know, it impacts the community, but it doesn't necessarily directly relate and interact with our residents. And what you've been doing in your career here with Dublin does directly impact people and their enjoyment of our community. And I think we honestly can say that you have left this organization in much better shape than where you found it, which is a real judge of a man and his career, and your time here with us is greatly appreciated, not only by this council, but by this community. So thank you very much for everything that you did for us.
You know, the services.
Outstanding job.
I think they put the Napa thing together, the parts piece.
How many years have you
that
been
was
doing
under your
Napa
direction,
thing,
as I
Daryl?
recall.
It was part of mine, Michelle's, and
But-
Marsh's, but it's been 6 or 7.
Yeah, that has saved countless hours of overtime and manpower being out and away from the city chasing things, and that's really worked out well. So thank you for that.
And that program actually expanded beyond fleets, so we have other divisions using that, so it's saved a lot of time and money.
And I've said before, I'm the mayor, so I get to say this, it's just better in Dublin, and you have made our fleet, it's just simply better in Dublin, and you have made it an organization, an operation that other people strive to be like. So thank you very much for what you've done for us, Delia. You are truly appreciated by this community. And with that, we are adjourned.